Good evening and welcome to this evening's Aspire Applicants event, which is aimed at those of you that are thinking about applying for economics, politics or geography, or a combination of those subjects, and are interested in learning more about our Aspire programme here at college. As you can see, I've got some students with me who are going to be also participating in the event this evening. So what we're going to cover, first of all, I should introduce myself. My name is Ellen Walkinshaw and I'm the Associate Director responsible for progression here. So that really covers everything to do with helping our students make their next steps after they've left Reigate College. And we're going to cover or give you an overview of the Aspire programme. As I said, you're going to be introduced to some current students who were all either in Aspire last year or who are currently going through the Aspire programme. They are going to sort of showcase a debate for you, which you'll, as an audience, be able to vote on the motion for. And you'll also have the opportunity to ask questions of our students, which you can post in the Q&A function on Zoom. I'll give you a little bit of advice about subject choice, because I know that you're in the process of choosing your subjects at A-level or BTEC, and we'll talk a little bit about next steps, so what you can be doing to get ready for Aspire between now and when you join us next academic year. So what is the Aspire programme? So the Aspire programme will aim to guide you through the whole process of deciding what you want to do when you leave college. So when you arrive, some of you might already have quite a clear idea of what it is that you want to go on to do, but most of you probably won't. And the Aspire programme will help you decide what it is that you want to do, and then advise you on how to make a successful application for whatever your chosen route is. At the heart of the programme is a weekly lesson with a dedicated tutor, and they're quite small groups. So most Aspire classes range in size from about 7 to about 13 students, and you'll have a tutor who really is expert in guiding you through the process of making your choices and making a successful application. And that is on your timetable once a week throughout the lower 6th year. As an Aspire student, you will also have the option to complete an extended project qualification, an EPQ, and we'll talk a bit more about that later on. So now, in fact, so what is an EPQ? So it is an individual research project that the students, you'll be able to choose the focus of yourself, and you'll hear from our current students, what some of their titles were, and I'll give you some examples of previous titles. It usually, and particularly for the types of subjects that you're interested in, will take the form of an extended essay. But some students do submit an artifact, so they actually produce something. So last year's cohort, we had a card game that somebody had made. In the past, we've had pieces of computer programming. We've had architectural models as well. But as I said, for the subjects that you're applying for, most people would do an extended essay, so a dissertation, or perhaps for geographers, maybe a field study. It does count as half an A-level, and universities really love to see students doing an EPQ, because the skills that you have to demonstrate are the types of skills that you'll be using at university. So you'll have to manage your own time very effectively. You'll be working a lot more independently than you are in your other subjects, and carrying out your own research. And a lot of Russell Group universities do actually make you a lower offer if you have achieved an A or an A star in your EPQ. So for instance, this year so far, we've had students getting lower offers for universities such as Birmingham, Bath, Cardiff, York, and Southampton, just to mention a few, and Exeter, sorry, that are making lower offers for students that have an EPQ. So it's a really good thing to do for lots of reasons, and not least because you will really enjoy it, and it's something that will really help you develop academically. So some examples of EPQ titles that maybe relate to the types of subjects that you're interested in studying. So somebody this year is looking at the American constitutional right to bear arms and talking about whether that has a significant negative social impact on the US. Something that somebody's looking at is whether class or race representation is a more important issue in the UK Parliament. Something that we actually debated in Aspire just last week in some of our lessons was, is the world overpopulated? The philosophical debate. So thinking about whether it is morally right for people to have larger families, given the climate situation, and that's something that we've actually discussed in Aspire recently. Somebody else did an EPQ about whether artifacts in the British Museum should be returned to their countries of origin. So lots of links there. If any of you are thinking about also studying history with the modern history course, the British Empire unit. Somebody who's interested in economics but also in fashion is looking at whether the fashion industry can ever be environmentally sustainable, and clearly links with geography there as well. And finally, one that somebody's doing with a sort of geographical but also biological slant, looking at to what extent climate change is affecting animal sex ratio. So they're just a very few of the EPQ titles that people are working towards completing this year. To give you an idea of the scale of the numbers of people we have completing EPQ, we've got 162 students in the current upper sixth that have submitted an EPQ as part of one cohort of Aspire, and a further 91 who've done it on a slightly different time frame that I'll explain to you later. So it's about 250 students we've got completing an EPQ. So how do you get onto a place on the Aspire programme, and also as part of that, the opportunity to do an EPQ? You will be eligible for a place on the Aspire programme if you have an average GCSE score of around 6.5 and above. So obviously if you add up all your predicted grades and divide them by the number of GCSEs that you're taking, you'll be able to get an idea of whether the Aspire programme might be something that you could aim for when you get your results. Now we do, within that cohort of students, subdivide them a little bit further. So if you do super well in your GCSEs and you get an average of over 7.5, we put you into a cohort of Aspire students that will have the opportunity to complete an EPQ in their lower sixth year. Now, the reason why we divide students like that is because quite a large number of those of you with those very high GCSE scores might be considering applying to either Oxford or Cambridge, or maybe making a medicine, veterinary science or dentistry application. And you'll have a lot on in your upper sixth autumn term, because you'll be attending interview, sitting admissions tests and so on. And we think that, with that high GCSE score, you'll be really ready for an EPQ quite early on. Those of you with also really good GCSE scores, from around 6.5 to 7.5, you'll carry out the research on one in the lower sixth year and then write it up in the autumn term of your upper sixth year. So you've had a bit more of a chance to get used to your main subjects before you also embark on an EPQ. Now, one thing to take into account is that it's really not compulsory at all to do an EPQ as part of the Aspire programme. Some of you that have joined us this evening might be thinking about doing 4 A-levels, in which case we would definitely recommend, in most cases, not also doing an EPQ, because that would just be too much of a workload. And you really need to, concentrate on those 4 A-levels. Or some of you might do only 3 A-levels or the equivalent, so 2 A-levels and a BTEC, and might think that you really just want to concentrate on those subjects rather than adding to your workload and completing an EPQ. So it's not compulsory to do an EPQ as part of Aspire, because the programme mostly really is about helping you decide what you want to do in the future. And EPQ is something that you will be completing in your own time. Adding Aspire to your programme of study will be discussed when you come for your enrolment interview. So that's the interviews that you have after your GCSE results. So we'll know whether you have qualified or not. Just to emphasise, you don't need to apply now. Okay, so there's nothing you need to do in terms of your application to try and enrol in Aspire now. It happens as part of the process that we go through post results when we see you at the beginning of the autumn term. Okay. So why bother with Aspire? What's the impact? Because, it is an extra lesson on your timetable, as I said, a week. It's going to ease into the time you have to spend on other things. It has been really successful. So just to give you some statistics to support that, we began Aspire actually before 2017, but just looking at the most recent five or so years, Cohort in 2017 to 18, there were just 263 students on it, and we've now gone up to 437 students on the programme. I was talking to people earlier actually about the attendance in Aspire, and attendance in Aspire is about 99.04, well, it's very precise, 99.04 the last time I looked, percent, which is obviously an excellent attendance figure for a course that is voluntary for students, suggesting that they are finding it beneficial. In the time since 2017, the percentage of our students applying to Russell Group universities of a percentage that got offers all, from all universities has increased from 21 to 30%. So in our most recent cohort of leavers, 30% of students were going on to Russell Group universities. Likewise, you can see there some statistics. I won't go through all of them, but the numbers of students going on to Oxford or Cambridge, and less relevant for obviously the courses we're talking about today, but also for medicine, vet science and dentistry courses, has also increased. I have to say, though, I don't want to place too much emphasis just on those Russell Group universities, because a Russell Group university might not be right for everyone. The Sutton Trust, which is an educational charity, they have created a list called Sutton 30. And in the Sutton 30, there are other universities such as Bath, Royal Holloway and St Andrews, which a lot of people assume are actually Russell Group universities, but are also very competitive universities that our Aspire students go on to. And it may well be that actually the course that you want to do is not best taught or even taught at all at Russell Group universities. So some people that want to go into computer game design, for instance, it wouldn't necessarily be a Russell Group university that would be the best university for that sort of course. And we also have a range of degree apprenticeships that students go on to. So we've had students go on to the Nestle degree apprenticeship programs, onto UBS, so wealth management degree apprenticeships, and Charles Russell Speechley's, which is a law firm, is amongst several law firms that Aspire students have gone on to study for degree apprenticeships through. So although I suppose that the main focus of Aspire is to prepare you for universities and competitive universities, we in no way want Aspire students to feel that that's has to be their destination or that's the only option for them. Just to show you can see for the subjects that we're looking at this evening, it probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to you that the #1 destination, or the most popular university destination for economics students, was to go on and study economics and politics and geography. But you can see there, these are the top 5 most common university destinations for each of those A-level subjects. And yes, as you can see, lots of students going on to study what we call joint or combined honours degrees. So that's something else to think about. You don't have to study just one subject at university, and some of the students that are here this evening are thinking about studying PPE, which is actually 3 subjects combined. Obviously, quite a bit of overlap with economics and maths. So if you're thinking about eventually studying a Bachelor of Science in economics, it'd be a good idea to also have maths on your programme of study when you're thinking about your A-levels. So yeah, hopefully that's a good overview of the types of destinations university-wise that students studying these subjects might go on to after the Aspire programme. So that's enough of me talking. So I'd like now to hand over to our current students. As you can see, we've got 3 upper 6 students with us and 2 who are in the lower 6. So, the upper 6 students were in your shoes just 2 years ago, and the lower 6 students in your shoes just 1 year ago. So hopefully you'll really be able to relate to them, and it'll be really useful, I think, for you to hear from them all. So we'll start with Edwa, who's going to explain a little bit about where she went, what school she went to, and what she's studying here at Reigate. Thank you, Edwa.
Hello, I'm Edwa. I studied at the Warwick School, now the Carrington Academy. Today I study politics, English literature and biology. I did an EPQ on societally imposed guilt in Jekyll and Hyde, which was kind of a combination of my English literature and politics. And doing that EPQ really let me find out what I loved about both subjects. And I'm hoping to study PPE at Oxford.
Fantastic. And Yusuf.
Hello, yes, my name is Yusuf. A-level, I study politics, English literature, and sociology, and I hope to go study law at Cambridge. For me, the most useful thing about Aspire was getting that head start on university applications, especially my Oxbridge application, and also it provided me with many other sources I could go to further help my application.
Okay, I didn't actually tell you that I was asking this, but I just thought maybe you could also mention what you did your EPQ on.
So I did my EPQ on whether or not euthanasia should be legalized, which was a combination of a controversial topic which I was interested in, but also linked to what I want to do in the future because it related to law.
Fantastic, thank you. And Jay.
Hi, I'm Jay. I went to St. Bede's, and at Reigate College I study politics, philosophy and modern history. And one thing about the EPQ especially that I found to be quite positive was that I think it's great to prepare for more university style work.
I just realised this looks a bit like the beginning of University Challenge when everybody introduces themselves. Right, again, on to our lower six students. So Evie.
Hi, I'm Evie. I went to the Royal Alexandra and Albert School. At Reigate, I'm currently studying politics, economics and classics. And in the future, I hope to study classics at Oxford. And Aspire really helped me kind of decide which degree I did want to apply for, because I was very undecided, but now I definitely know what I want to do.
Thank you. And Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe. Before Reigate, I went to the Warwick, and at college, I studied politics, economics and maths. I'm also doing an EPQ that's entitled To What Extent Was the AIDS Crisis Preventable, which creates a real overlap between politics and economics. Aside from that, Aspire sessions have helped me with the process of personal statement writing, which is especially useful because I want to study philosophy, politics and economics at Oxford.
Thank you. And so later on in the evening, when we're answering questions, you'll be able to ask questions, and maybe you might want to direct them at one of these students in particular, if they have a good overlap with the subjects that you're interested in too, or we can direct them to one of these students will be able to answer lots of your questions, I'm sure. Okay, moving on then to, I suppose, the main focus of this evening. We're going to have a debate. Now, debating, as I mentioned just now, is something that we do in Aspire. Debating skills are useful to develop for interview practice, and for when you get to university, you'll be learning in much more of a kind of seminar style, where you'll need to be able to defend points that you're making. When you're writing an EPQ in your discussion, you need to be able to put forward arguments and counter arguments and evaluate them. So if you can do that verbally in a debate, there's a good chance you'll also be able to do it in writing in your EPQ. And also it's something that Aspire students generally really enjoy. And if you really, really like debating, then as well as doing a bit of it in Aspire, as part of your kind of university preparation, you can also join debating club, which takes place in college. So we chose the topic, or the motion rather, the UK should reduce its foreign aid budget, because it has relevance and links with all three of the subjects we're thinking about this evening. The structure of the debate will be, we'll have an opening speech from both sides. They're going to question each other. We'll have some closing remarks, and you will be able to vote as an audience. So as you're listening, you'll be using the poll to vote at the end. So wait until you've heard both sides of the argument before you vote. You might have an opinion already, but wait to hear both sides of the debate, and then you'll be able to cast your votes in the poll. So could we have the opening speech first of all? Thank you.
So we're arguing that the UK should reduce its foreign aid budget. Recently, the UK government announced its intentions to cut the foreign aid budget from 0.7% of gross income to 0.5%. They cited the effects of the pandemic on the UK economy, and the fact that money was best used in dealing with UK issues caused by the pandemic, e.g. like homelessness, and rough sleeping, which is a very prevalent problem still in UK society. And when we do have foreign aid, what we notice a lot is that usually it's actually given to quite relatively wealthy powerhouses, for example, India and China. And then 1/6 of the money that goes towards foreign aid ends up in the hands of elites or in corruption. So is foreign aid, the money that we're sending, actually useful? Others might argue that morally it presents a quandary because it represents a sort of modern colonialism, in that the amount of money you put into a country represents how much soft power you have over them. and it leaves countries in debt to the UK, and it makes them rely on the UK, which we can question the ethics of almost. Money, therefore, could be redirected to issues within the UK that still haven't been solved and haven't seen an awful lot of legislation or problem solving, and maybe even resolving the barriers to countries growing that we are currently seeing as third world countries that we send foreign aid to. Rather than throwing money at a problem, we can help resolve barriers preventing that country from growing by itself.
Thank you very much. And now we've got, I think, Evie putting the case against the motion.
So foreign aid by definition is money, food, or other resources given or lent to one country by another. And government officials have defended the reduction as a necessary in light of the seismic impact of the pandemic on the UK economy. But according to the Department of Health and Social Care, that same government purchased over £2.5 million worth of PPE that is not suitable for use in the NHS, and then over £1.5 million on PPE that's not suitable for any use whatsoever. Money that could have been used on producing and transporting the vaccine to third world countries who are lacking the facilities themselves. And this would have contributed to our foreign aid. So it's clear that even in our country, money is being spent on the wrong things. So how can we be so critical of other countries when we're doing the same thing? I believe the argument should not be about reducing the foreign aid budget, but instead about how much we should increase it. And this doesn't necessarily mean that we should create higher taxes for people, for the general public. Instead, we could consider cuts elsewhere. So like the £36 billion annual military budget. And the UK Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health pointed to research showing that a 1% increase in the health aid reduces infant deaths by 2.6%. So I don't see why this is even a debatable topic. And as well, the assumption that the UK can't afford to continue with the 0.7% target, even with the economic disruption of COVID-19, is irrelevant due to the fact that the target, being a percentage of GDP, means that the actual amount of aid rises and falls with the UK's economic prospects. I do agree that homelessness and poverty are equally important issues in the UK, but if we take a closer look at our own economic system, shareholders of large corporations are free to go home with millions of pounds in dividends every year, whilst those same employees working for them are still seeking benefits from the government. And this isn't really a financially viable company, and should technically close down, because if we're a free capitalist market, then it doesn't work. But yeah, so I mean, greedy capitalists aren't, however, comparable to terrorist organizations controlling the lives of millions of people in their own country, as we see in places like Afghanistan. So yeah, I think we should still be doing as much as we possibly can in the way of foreign aid, despite our own economic injustice. But yeah, I mean, it's clear as well that foreign aid projects have good intentions and do produce successful outcomes. An example of this is the UK's 10-year programme of direct cash transfers to families with malnourished children in Kenya, a project that was so successful that even the Kenyan government have adopted it themselves to continue. But yeah, and generally, I just think that foreign aid is a moral obligation for the UK, arising from our position as a wealthy country, and then the subsequent duties to help those that are worse off. A duty that is especially serious given the UK's history of colonialism and military intervention. So yeah, I don't think that there should even be a suggestion that it should be reduced at all. And yeah, we should probably increase it, if anything.
Okay, thank you, Evie. Just a reminder that if you've got questions for the Q&A later on, you can put them in the Q&A that's at the bottom of your screen. If you want to ask questions to the debate, you can put them there as well. I don't know how many will have time because there's quite a big audience, because I think the panelists have got some questions to ask each other as well. So questions from the for side to the against side, first of all, please.
My first question for you guys would be, internationally, the two countries that received the most foreign aid in 2017 were Turkey and India. India is the fifth largest economy in the world, and Turkey is an emerging nation. Also, China, with an economy 5 times the size of the UK economy, received 71 million in aid in 2020. And although that's been reduced, it's still a massive number. Is aid really going to where it should be? And is there a darker side to aid, maybe?
Well, China and India, I would argue, are still developing nations due to the extreme income inequality found within them. While there is income inequality, like domestically, I would argue that the effects of it occur to a lesser extent than in those nations, because we have a greater quality of public services and like decent standards of living for those on the lowest wages. The same can't be said for the majority of nations that we give aid to. So like China, their minimum wage equates to less than £1,500 a year. And as China is a major exporter to the UK, continuing to build economic relations will provide future benefits, i.e. they like us. While there is obvious debate on the morality of helping others for personal benefit, I'd argue this type of aid is still beneficial, as long as the people who need the most help receive it. As a result of international aid, the basic purpose is fulfilled, and any benefit to the UK comes as an unavoidable consequence.
Do you need to come back to that, or do you want to ask another question?
I'll move on to another question that is linked to this. So, development aid, especially from the UK, has propped up a government in Ethiopia which has forced thousands out of their land, abused human rights, and tortured innocent people. So, you might argue again that this has some benefit to the UK, but what does that tell us about foreign aid? Are we even helping?
Well, because this is the case, the UK should then diversify how the budget is spent instead of just reducing it. So, for example, you could send humanitarian workers in to help in places like hospitals or human rights enforcement, as this would undoubtedly be more beneficial than bankrolling tyranny. It's our government's responsibility to ensure that the aid is being used in the right way. But misallocation doesn't mean that budget should be cut. All they have to do is like change how it's being spent.
I think we've got time for another question from the floor side, if you ask one.
So the state uses the people's tax, and obviously that means it has political motivations and interests. And the state can't even spend massively on ensuring aid is appropriately channeled. So maybe this isn't a role for the state in the first place. Human rights organizations such as Human Appeal have helped countries in need far more than the UK has as a government. And we saw that in Yemen, where universities were built, hospitals were built, and the locals were asked about what they need. So is it really the government's job to be sending aid, or should it be non-governmental organizations?
If the government were to financially support organizations that can genuinely prove they make a positive impact on nations, like it still creates benefit for that the aid budget is trying to secure. Like if anything, supporting these organizations allow for increased benefit without an increased budget, because all of the funding can be used on proven channels of support. So they don't have to like spend money in kind of like getting the troops there, like essentially, because there's already troops there, already troops ready to go. So like you don't have to waste money on creating like channels of support.
Okay, right, I think we'll move on to questions from the other side now. So do we have questions for the floor side? Thank you.
Okay, so according to the BBC, the top 5 countries receiving foreign aid were Pakistan, Ethiopia, Afghanistan, Yemen, and Nigeria, most of which are war-torn countries heavily impacted by conflict. Do you truly think it's acceptable to reduce aid when we are the original suppliers of the destructive weapons being used against the people of Afghanistan and Yemen, for example?
Well, as you said, these countries are war-torn, and as you said, we did contribute to their current state. But I would still say what is practical is not pity money that is with political motivations as well. Rather, we should end the armed deals that are still causing these conflicts. We should sanction the aggressors. Now, am I saying aid doesn't help at all? No, again, I'm just stressing that we should leave it to groups like Human Appeal, who will have a far more helpful effect than the expansive, inefficient, and ineffective state apparatus.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, I have another one. So do you believe that a cut in spending, which helps millions of girls become educated, stops violence against women, and helps survivors of war zones, is ethically right?
So I believe that women from other nations should not depend on foreign state aid that is top down, unspecialized, and not empowering. True aid is one that is bottom up, empowering the locals, seeing what they need, rather than patronizing aid that comes from a foreign country. And we saw this in Nigeria with movements against FGM, and we also saw it in Mumbai in slums. So I really do think that this is a bottom up initiative that should be done locally, not from a different country's state aid.
And there's time for one final question.
Okay. So you mentioned directing money away from foreign aid as a means to improve issues within the UK. What makes the issues in the UK more important than foreign ones? Moreover, why should it be foreign aid that's cut if the UK issues are seen as more important? Surely wasted domestic finance could be employed in areas like the NHS to improve said issues.
Absolutely, those are important points, and how we spend money within the UK should perhaps be reconsidered. However, an argument against foreign aid, well, or reducing foreign aid, we're not even talking about removing foreign aid entirely. It's about not the UK issues being more important than foreign ones, but really rather it's much more local. And I think what we see as well with Yusuf's arguments was that a lot of aid is incompetent in how it's given. So rather, shouldn't we be focusing on problems with money that comes from the nation where it's from and solving those before we try and tell another nation how to work?
Okay, thank you. Could we have the closing statements now? Now, just bear in mind that while you're listening to the closing statements, you also need to be thinking about how you're going to vote in the poll. So as we listen to the closing statements, just think what your vote's going to be. So the closing statement for the for side, first of all, please.
I think to summarize, I believe the argument for reducing the foreign aid budget can be summed up as such. Foreign aid, largely state foreign aid, is an effective tool which is intended to tackle a very real problem. And in some ways, you can see it as how it's largely a patronizing tool or a form of neo-colonialism, implicating a kind of moral high ground for developed Western countries to be using their excess budget to treat issues that they created, that they're historically responsible for. And further, in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, we do not have the financial clout to be spending almost 1% of our gross domestic product on foreign aid. The £4 billion that will be saved from the proposed government cuts can be well used in other areas which have been historically disadvantaged in terms of domestic spending, such as local councils, which have been struggling for millions, let alone billions of pounds. Lastly, regulation of foreign aid expenditure is highly lax, as we've spoken about before. And in the past, this has led to irresponsible spending and an abuse of funds by groups outsourced to provide aid, such as Oxfam in Haiti. And I believe that these should all serve as reasons for cutting the UK's foreign aid budget.
Thank you. Closing remarks from the against side, please.
Briefly put, foreign aid is an asset to the UK and therefore shouldn't be reduced. The misallocation and misappropriation of finance causes a greater threat to the public sector and economy as a whole compared to helping innocent civilians in other nations. This is because it shows the self-serving nature of those in charge. Those in favour of the movement had failed to account for the reality of where the money would most likely go, the pockets of politicians and their political party donors. A £1 billion housing development grant was issued for Richard Desmond, a Conservative Party donor, at around the same time as a roughly £40 million fine in his name was due to the Tower Hamlet Council. After the grant, a donation of £12,000 was given directly to the Tories by Desmond. Blatant corruption of this manner, i.e. cash for honours, is frankly unacceptable from the offices of 10 Downing Street, and reallocating finance away from areas in which it was wasted would allow it to be put towards unarguably good sources, such as government-funded humanitarian aid. One of the 7 core principles of conservatism, which are the beliefs the current government supposedly follows, is human dignity. To assume that the mechanism of the free market allows for equal opportunity for everyone globally is naive, resulting in limited dignity for people in the poorest nations. Increased spending on financial aid would allow for the eventual level up of international economies, while also creating foundations for mutually beneficial trade relationships in the near future. bridges formed on the basis of helping others prop up both the lives and economies of other nations, and eventually our own. Foreign aid is a worthy cause.
Thank you. So we'll now open the poll now, and you'll be able to cast your votes. Now, something that I didn't say to the students that I was going to do, but I will do, is that I can ask them what way they would actually have voted if they were voting in the poll, because they didn't necessarily get to choose which side they were arguing. So that I'm sure you agree that they all argued very convincingly, but they might actually have been arguing against what they really think. I don't know. We're about to find out. And that is a real skill in debating, to be able to argue against the point that you really, really think. So first of all, Edward, what would you actually have voted if this was you were voting for the motion?
When I first heard of this question, my instinctive response was to, no, we shouldn't reduce our foreign aid budget. But as I read more and more around it and sort of got deeper into the subject, I realized that I do actually believe that it should be reduced, especially, I mean, I think we made very convincing points, and I hope we've convinced you too.
Okay, still got time to vote in the poll. We'll leave it open while we just go through. Just Jay, what did you actually think?
I actually support increasing the UK's foreign aid budgets. I think it's a very useful asset. If it does need reform, but I think it's a very useful asset in improving the global economy in ways that will benefit Britain, as well as also the countries that foreign aid seeks to benefit more directly. However, there are very strong arguments for reforming it extremely or cutting the budget quite significantly.
Yusuf, what do you think?
For me, really, at first, again, my instinctive response was we need to increase it. But after I saw the massive problems of our aid infrastructure, and I saw how much of a good job the other human rights organizations do, I would think that we should support these human rights organizations rather than spending on official government development aid.
Okay, and Evie?
I think it should be increased, just because I think, like, morally, as a wealthier country, we should do as much as we can to help poorer countries. And yeah, I think it should be increased.
And finally, Joe.
I definitely don't think it should be reduced at all. Like, I know I was very lucky that I was put on the side I agree with, but like, it's like a moral issue. And then also, like I mentioned, like, you're building connections with other nations. It's like in an increasingly globalized like world, those are always going to be beneficial. If you've got like better trade relationships, like etc., you can level up both economies at the same time, while also like ensuring like standards of living go up. So I just think it's beneficial all round. Although I will agree there should be some like a reform into how it's like enacted.
Okay, thank you. So they just goes to show they did, the people that were arguing against what they thought were arguing very convincingly. I think it was just Jay, really. The poll results are in, so we have quite a clear majority of you against that motion, so 79% against and 21% for. So congratulations, and clap to the against side. So well done, and well done for participating at home. Okay, so on to the rest of this evening then. You may well have some questions that you want to ask the panelists that we've got, and I've got my computer pass them on to me, and I'll have a look and see who, who would be best to answer them. So I think, how many hours of Aspire lessons you have per week? Probably a current Aspire student. So Joe, could you answer that?
So at the moment, it's just one Aspire lesson a week, which is an hour. I have mine at the end of a Thursday, so it fits in like quite well with my timetable, so I'm lucky in that regard. But it is just now and then. What we do like varies every week. So I'm doing an EPQ, so sometimes we'll have sessions that are focused towards people doing EPQs, and other times we'll have sessions focused to people going into other routes. And then we'll also have times where it's not focused around that at all. So we recently did a debate on euthanasia and like the kind of morality around that. So yeah, just a 1 hour a week session.
Okay, and do you find this might be a good one for the upper sixth? So maybe Yusuf, how much work when you're doing your EPQ and Aspire? How much work, like of sort of homework associated with Aspire, were you doing?
So as when it comes to the EPQ, I think the EPQ, for you to be fully relaxed with doing it, it should be about at the beginning, half an hour a week, but then especially after Christmas should be an hour a week minimum to try and get it done on time.
And linked to that, there was a question that somebody asked about the workload. What would you say to somebody that's worried about the workload of doing 3 essay-based subjects, particularly alongside an EPQ? So if you were going to do, and I think quite a few of you do basically do 3 essay-based subjects, don't you? So maybe Jay, talk about the workload issue. Thank you.
That it is there is something of a workload. However, I think it's absolutely manageable, and I think it's more a question of organizing your time so that you know what you should be doing and when you should be doing it, and targeting when you should be focusing on different subjects and figuring out what you need to work on the most. But it's definitely a manageable workload if you figure out a way of organizing your time to work through all of your subjects and giving them all enough time so that you can succeed when it comes to your exams.
That's great. Okay, there's a question here that I will answer. So when I was talking about if you have an A or an A star or an EPQ, that a university might give you a lower offer. So what I mean by that is that universities have standard offers. So typically for Russell Group universities, those offers are going to be kind of between A stars and Bs. So for instance, for economics and politics, which I know, lots of you might be thinking about as a kind of combined honours degree, given who we've got here, the offers might range from A star AA, somewhere like LSE, or even A star, probably A star AA would be the highest, to perhaps the lowest Russell Group offer might be ABB. Now, if you have an A star or an A in an EPQ, a lot of universities would lower that standard offer by 1 grade. So for instance, I can give you an actual example of Birmingham University. So Birmingham's standard offer for economics and politics is AAB, but with an EPQ, they'll lower that to ABB. So that's what we mean by a lower offer. Okay. Another question, how many students in an Aspire study group? So I'm just thinking I don't know whether the upper six can even remember how many students were in their Aspire groups last year, but about how many approximately are in your groups? First of all, Evie, maybe.
I think there are about 10 of us. But yeah, it's really nice. It's a lot smaller than like a usual class. So it kind of just means that you get a bit more attention, like personally, on whatever you're doing for that subject. But yeah, it's only about 10 of us in my one, so it's quite nice.
Joe, how many did we say there are in our class?
Yeah, mine's about the same, 10 people, and it allows Ellen's my Aspire teacher, so she'll come around each of us and have a one-to-one conversation about if we're doing an EPQ, what's happening with that, or anything else that we want to ask about.
Okay, thank you. Question that I'll answer. So the grade requirements to get into Oxbridge. So for essay-based courses, then the typical offer would be A star AA. But for something that's more science-based, they'll mostly ask for A star A. So if you are thinking about actually studying geography, economics or politics at Oxford or Cambridge, the offer would probably be A star AA. Having said that, most people that apply and actually get made offers would be achieving higher grades than that. So it is the grade requirements are really high, we will give you, obviously you will have all the help and support you need deciding whether it's right to make an Oxford application, and obviously helping you get those grades that you would need. GCSE grades, do they count? So do you need to have 9s? No. So one thing, Cambridge have actually said that they don't differentiate really between 8s and 9s at GCSE. So they would be expecting to see kind of like a higher GCSE profile for you making an Oxford or Cambridge application. But no, they wouldn't look specifically if you're applying for geography, for instance, for a 9 in geography at GCSE. They wouldn't be looking specifically for that. And both Oxford and Cambridge say they don't have a particular GCSE profile that they are looking for. We have one student who's studying at Cambridge now in her first year at Cambridge, and her GCSE profile only just qualified her for Aspire. So she was, mostly averages of 6s, but there were reasons for that. So she'd changed school a lot of times and so on, which they took into account with her application. So yeah, you would be expected to have quite a high GCSE profile, but there's no specific GCSE requirements for an Oxbridge application. So I hope that helps answer that. A good question, whether you take part in Aspire for lower and upper. So no, the Aspire programme just runs in the lower 6th year. And then in the upper 6th year, if you are thinking about making an Oxbridge application, you'd be in an Oxford and Cambridge tutor group. So all 3 of our upper 6th tutor groups, the J's and my tutor group, Yusuf and Edouard are in different Oxbridge tutor groups. Or if you were thinking about making a general UCAS application to other universities, you'd be in a tutor group for that, and you get kind of help through the tutorial programme in the upper 6th year. So Aspire is just in the lower 6th year, although if you are doing an EPQ in the kind of 6.5 and above tier, then you'd be doing your EPQ in the autumn term, and you'd have an EPQ tutor for that. Good. Okay. So I think again, this is probably one that I'll probably answer rather than the students, but it might be worth, they might have some input in it. So if the topic of your EPQ links closely to a particular subject, are you able to get help on that subject from that subject teacher, or only your Aspire teacher? Now, when we think about who's going to support you with your EPQ, it will be your Aspire tutor if you're doing it in the first year, and if you do one in the upper 6th, it will be an EPQ tutor. Now, I'm a history teacher by background, that's my subject, but I will supervise EPQs in a whole range of subjects, from black holes to, yes, history EPQs, to EPQs on supervising artifacts, all sorts of EPQs. And actually, I think it's better sometimes to have an EPQ supervisor who isn't a subject specialist. If I'm supervising history EPQs, the temptation to meddle in them is really quite great. And it should really be a student working much more independently. I think that's, Edward, just talk a bit about whether you got any subject specific help. Remind people what your EPQ title was, and just maybe say whether you got subject specific help, or whether you didn't, or whether it would have been useful or not.
So my EPQ title was about Jekyll and Hyde, and specifically what Hyde represented within the context of the novel. So it linked into English, obviously, literature. A lot of you will have studied it as well. But what I particularly focused on was the political sort of climate of the age that Stevenson was writing in. So both my English and my politics teachers were very helpful, and if I had any questions, they were very happy to help. Pretty sure I got quite a few of the websites that I used from them as well. You will find that just the teachers in college are incredibly helpful and really willing to, as Ellen said, meddle should need be. And you won't have any trouble with it. You're not restricted to your Aspire teacher. My Aspire teacher taught geography, for example, but she was still really helpful in getting the EPQ done.
Okay, thank you. Just I think there's a question about subject choice at A level, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. So for instance, if you want to do geography and physics and maths, I think was the other one, wasn't it? Would that be a problem, or would that be kind of restricting your options? No, that sounds like a very good combination of subjects. So if, and I think a lot of students here, so for instance, Joe does maths as well, alongside his essay-based subjects. And they go really well together. In fact, this distinction that we have, and we're guilty of doing it this evening, of dividing subjects into either arts-based subjects or science-based subjects, it is not actually particularly helpful. In fact, Cambridge University, you'll be the first year of students to be able to apply for it, are introducing a new degree. For the first time in a long time, they've introduced an actual new subject for a degree, and it is one that aims to bring together science and essay-based subjects in sort of a way that will help us kind of overcome some of the big issues of today, particularly climate change. So something like a combination like geography, I think it's physics and maths, would be really good for that sort of engineering, but with a kind of more sort of humanities focus as well. Yeah, that sounds like a really good combination of subjects. We do realise it's hard for you to narrow down your choices to 3. There is the option to do 4 A levels if you've got a really strong GCSE profile and you can cope with a lot of work. And that's something that we will discuss with you at interview as well. Okay, I'll just see if there's any other questions coming in. Bear with me 1 second. Couple of questions that look like they are kind of more for me. So if you've got an average where you just don't quite get 6.5 as your average of GCSE, we do vary a little bit from year to year. So the last couple of years, we've found that we have got a large number of students with very high GCSE results. Because they haven't sat exams. So not to undermine at all the achievements of students here in the room with me, but we did, that was why we did actually increase the entrance requirements for Aspire slightly. So historically they'd been 6 or 6.2. They're a little bit higher. They've been a little bit higher the last couple of years. So we'll look at the results this year and decide where the cutoff is. Obviously the cutoff has to be somewhere. We can't we don't have the resource to offer Aspire to everybody, and it wouldn't necessarily be the right sort of program for everybody. But if you just don't quite get that average, do just speak to the person at interview and say that you really want a place on the Aspire program. The Aspire email address is aspire@reigate.ac.uk. I wouldn't worry about it now, just concentrate on trying to get the best GCSEs you can. But if after results day you haven't quite got there and you're worried, do just email us, and we would look at you on a case-by-case basis. We do talk a little bit about universities abroad. I'll just look at, is there anybody with me here that's considered? Okay, so Edward's given a bit of consideration to studying abroad, so I'll see if she's got anything to say. I always preface anything I say about universities abroad with the fact that we have over 1,000 students apply to university in the UK every year from Reigate College. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that we are experts in supporting students through that process. I'm sure you can appreciate we can't possibly be experts in understanding the UCAS, the university application processes in every country around the world, but we do every year have some students apply to university abroad, so typically 1 or 2 to universities in America, often with sports scholarships or similar, and 1 or 2 each year to universities in the Netherlands. University there's the fees are slightly cheaper and courses are taught in English. So I didn't teach Edward last year, so I'd be interested to know what her thoughts were, perhaps before she decided to make her Oxford application, where she was thinking about applying abroad.
Well, it's still a contingency plan, but I was going to apply to a Japanese scholarship. And what I found was that I could talk it through with my Aspire teacher and with my tutor this year, who I will be sending an annoying email to very soon. And the Aspire program wasn't geared towards that. But often when you are applying to universities abroad, there will be a very clear sort of way to do that. So there will be a lot of guidance just online, like, for example, for the Japanese scholarship that I'm applying to, it is on every embassy site. So it is pretty straightforward, and your teachers will be, they'll be willing to help you with it.
Thank you. Somebody else, I think maybe because we've split this evening into a session that you're in, obviously, for economics and politics and geography, and another session later this evening for sciences, so maths and physics. There is just one Aspire course. So in an Aspire class, there'll be some people that want to be medics, some people that are applying to study law, some people that are applying to study physics or engineering or computer science. There's one Aspire course, and I think it's really beneficial to be hearing from each other. So we don't have a science or a humanities focused Aspire classes that everybody's in together. If you do apply to Oxford or Cambridge, we do group you, or try and group you as far as possible alongside people that apply for similar subjects. So no, you don't need to choose an Aspire course, you just are on Aspire. The only difference is, according to kind of what your GCSE score is when you do the EPQ. Okay, I appreciate you might have other questions, but we're going to need to kind of move on to the last part of this evening. As I said, the email address is aspire@reigate.ac.uk, or you can just email admissions that you've been corresponding with so far, and they can forward any questions to us. So moving on then, just to go over like the last few things. This has come up a bit in the Q&A, but advice about subject choice. Do just choose, I think, the subjects that you're going to be good at and that you're going to enjoy. Okay, so this is going to be really, really important. What are your strengths academically and what are your interests academically? You are going to have to work really hard when you get here, so you need to be able to enjoy it as well. And do research your courses. So there's lots of information on the website already, and soon we'll be rolling out what we call our new starters activities. And you can try out the new starters activities for as many subjects as you like. So even ones that you're not sure about, but you might want to try and find out more about. I'd encourage you to complete the new starters activities because that will help you decide. It's particularly important that you research courses when there are new subjects. So you won't, in most cases, have studied, for instance, economics or politics at GCSE level. And it's really important, particularly for those subjects, that you understand what they're going to involve. Jay was nodding there, so I'm just going to pick on him to say, did he do any research about choosing politics? And also, I mean, I know we're not talking about philosophy this evening, but some of you might also be interested in philosophy, and Jay does philosophy, and they're obviously two courses that he hadn't studied at GCSE. So just maybe talk a bit about any research you did beforehand into like those subjects. Thank you.
So of course, yeah, neither philosophy or politics were offered at GCSE, but I do both of them at A-level. And I think one thing that was really important and is available on the college website is you can see the structure of each course. So for philosophy, I was initially kind of on the fence about it, but when I looked at the different, like what the course was composed of, and I looked at past papers, and I realized that I actually find it quite interesting. And so even if it's an area which you don't know much about, it's certainly something which you can grow into. And one thing I think might also be important to note is that I had initially, I actually had to change my choices. I wanted to apply for law, and at an interview I changed it for philosophy. So the initial, it's saying it's more flexible. It's not set in stone from the get-go. I changed to philosophy because I realized in switching to Reigate College from St. Bede's that I actually wanted to take philosophy.
Thank you very much. And final bit of advice, there's a really excellent website that's put together by the Russell Group universities called Informed Choices. So if you Google Informed Choices, Russell Group, you'll be able to find it really easily. And they give you lots of advice about the best subject combinations for studying different degrees, or best subject options for subject choices for keeping your options as open as possible. So I'd recommend that website. So what next? Okay, going away from this evening, hopefully you felt like that Aspire is something that you want to be part of. So the main thing is to work hard to get the best possible GCSE results that you can, and you haven't got that long left at school before you're going to kind of come here and be involved in all these things you've heard about this evening. So just dig deep. It might seem, particularly for those subjects that maybe you don't want to take at A-level. I know sometimes it's a challenge to stay motivated and work in them, but do work really hard in all of your GCSEs. Look out for the new starters activities. So as well as new starters activities on the website for the different A-level or BTEC subjects, we also have new Aspire new starters activities. So look out for those. And just start exploring your subjects. And I've got some kind of links here or examples of things that you could be doing to explore and read around the subjects that you might be wanting to study. So I'll just draw your attention to a few. So Future Learn here, those are online courses. They're really kind of pitched between A-level and university, so kind of going quite a bit beyond where you are now. But if you're really kind of ambitious academically, you could have a look at some of those online courses. The Conversation, the website up there in the top right hand corner of the slide, that is a news website. So if you're interested, for instance, in what's happening in the Ukraine, there'll be commentary on that and other current affairs issues. But the difference between the Conversation and something like The Guardian or The Telegraph or The Times is that all the articles on that website are written by academics, so by university academics rather than professional journalists. TED Talks you might well have come across before, so I'd recommend them as a way of kind of like researching different topics you're interested in. Likewise, the BBC podcasts of various BBC programmes, such as In Our Time, are good to broaden your knowledge. So the raw recording of this webinar link will be sent out to you. So and there'll be an online feedback form as well. So if you have missed anything, then you can obviously listen back to the recording, and we'd really appreciate it if you could fill in the online feedback form as well. So all that remains me to do is to wish you obviously the best of luck for your GCSEs. So as I said, work hard and just enjoy your last few weeks of school, because it is only a few weeks really now, and just keep in touch with college. Follow us on Facebook, or maybe your parents can follow us on Facebook, and you can follow us on Instagram, and our website address is there. And I should have also put on the slide, if you've got any specific questions about Aspire, it is just aspire@reigate.ac.uk is our Aspire email address. So thank you ever so much for joining us this evening. And I think that's what on University Challenge, don't they say goodbye from me and goodbye from, don't I mute yourselves and say goodbye?
Okay, so
Goodbye.
goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.